Hello, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Alison Bennett, the Liberal Democrat MP for Mid Sussex and the party spokesperson for Care and Carers. Alison, can you start by giving our viewers a little bit of a background to you and how you became interested in the care sector?
So I was elected in the general election last year in July. I'd been involved in politics since 2015. That's when I joined the Lib Dems. I basically got a little bit cross with the state of the world, joined the party, didn't think anything would really come of it. And safe to say, it snowballed. And here I am in Parliament, been an MP for 18 months now. It's a fantastic experience. There is so much negativity about politicians and politics. But, in my life, I've had some average jobs, and this isn't one of them. This is an amazing job. And every day when I come to Parliament, I feel so lucky to be here. Amazing, talented colleagues. And then when I'm back at home in Mid Sussex, you meet everybody in your constituency, all walks of life, people doing incredible things, running charities, setting up new businesses, and people are really struggling. And the opportunity to try to help them and try and support those people and support the innovation and the community projects is genuinely a privilege. So I feel very, very lucky to be doing that.
Can you tell our viewers a bit more about the Respite Support Bill that you've been championing in Parliament?
So I had a career break to have children, and I've not been a carer in the official sense of the word, but when you're a stay-at-home mum, when you're at home with kids and you're not quite sure how you're going to get back into the workplace, it's quite humbling, and your world contracts and gets quite small. So, as I said, I'm very surprised that I've become a member of Parliament. Didn't know that was going to happen. But I feel it's incumbent on me to speak up for those people for whom actually a lot of their time and their role is about looking after other people, be it family members, friends as unpaid carers, and also people who work in the care sector, because it's really valuable work. It's not low skilled, it's really high skilled. I don't think I could be somebody who works in social care. I don't think I've got that kind of aptitude. But as a society, we don't value it, and I think it's important that we do.
Can you tell us a bit more about some of the main provisions that are contained within the bill?
So, as Liberal Democrats, we think it's really important that family carers who are giving everything to look after their loved ones don't burn out, and they have that chance of respite. And across the country, we can see various respite provisions being cut and being closed. And now it's really a postcode lottery about whether respite care is available to you. Being a carer drains everything out of you, or it certainly can for some people. And we're not just talking about the financial consequences. Carers are much more likely to be living in poverty. We're talking about people who never get a day off, who are kind of on call 24 hours a day, who have consequences that are really profound for their physical health and their mental health. And without that opportunity of a break, people can't keep going. They burn out, they end up becoming sick and not able to carry on looking for their loved ones. And that's why making sure that respite care is available to everybody who needs it is so important.
And what do you estimate to be the cost associated with the implementation of these measures?
So I think what's important to bear in mind when you're thinking about family carers is that the amount of provision that anybody needs will vary according to that individual. So it would be tailored according to individual need. But what the bill does is guarantee the right to access that respite care.
You recently raised the issue of delayed discharge from hospitals in your constituency. What do you think lies at the cause of this issue, and what do you think needs to be done to solve the problem?
So ultimately, by having access to respite care and keeping family carers able to carry on caring, what you end up with is a saving to the state overall. The actual details of how it gets costed, on an authority by authority basis would be something for down the line. But overall, we need to recognise as a society that by valuing and investing in family carers, ultimately you save the state money.
Some say that at the heart of the problem is discoordination between local authorities
So my question to the Prime Minister came about because the week before I was visiting the University Hospital Sussex Trust. I had a meeting with the chief exec, and as it happens, I was touring the pathology lab and talking to pathologists. And over coffee, I said, so I've got a PMQ next week. What would you want me to ask the Prime Minister? And the thing that came up was that not just in the winter, year round, University Hospitals Sussex have about 350 people who are medically ready for discharge but can't get home or into a care home because there is no social care package available for them. So that's not the winter peak, that's the average throughout the year. And they said, actually, that's roughly the same number of beds as the hospital in the trust that is in my Mid Sussex constituency, the Princess Royal in Haywards Heath. And I thought that visualisation of a whole hospital of people in Sussex ready to go home but not able to was really powerful. The King's Fund estimate that an acute hospital bed costs something like £395 per bed per night. So you start multiplying that up and you can start seeing like how that cost is absolutely enormous to the NHS. It's also worth bearing in mind that it's really bad for those people in those beds too. So at the weekend, I was talking to a consultant geriatrician, and she talked to me about hospital-acquired harms. So the longer you're in hospital, the more likely you are to develop bed sores, at this time of year in particular, to pick up a hospital bug, a flu or a norovirus. You are more likely to have a fall, she said, because you're not in your home environment. It's not familiar. So you're more likely to fall and be injured and then need further medical treatment. And you're also deconditioning. So the whole time you're in a bed, your muscles are wasting. So it's bad for those individuals. And then you have to think about the consequences for medics and for nurses who are looking after those people. So she talked to me very eloquently about the pressures of corridor care in our hospitals. So we're not just talking about people who are in corridors in A&E waiting to be on a ward. Actually, it's quite normal now to have corridor care up in the wards as well. And it means that patient harms are more likely to happen. People are more likely to dehydrate, particularly when you're thinking about frailty, people who maybe aren't so able to advocate for themselves if they're old or maybe they've got dementia. And so consequently, those people who need to go home, who would be better at home and aren't able to get home, are suffering. It's dragging on the hospitals terribly, and it's costing all of us as taxpayers a lot more money.
On the issue of local authority funding, how do you think an increase is best achieved? Do you think it should be done by increasing council tax or by increasing government grants?
So I think between the health service and the social care sector, there need to be shared incentives. Somebody who works in local government has described to me local government as being like the Cinderella service. So it isn't the sort of glamour, if I may use that word, of like a blue lights, ambulances like racing down the motorway, or as visual as a massive teaching hospital in a city. Social care and local government more generally is dispersed, and social care happens behind closed doors, in people's homes, in care homes. And I think because it's not visual, for too long, people have chosen not to think about it. And if I had a criticism of this Labour government 18 months in, they don't want to think about the social care reforms that are needed and the local government reforms more generally that are needed to put local government on a footing that is financially sustainable. And so the consequences of that are that the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, will stand up and talk about record-breaking investment in the NHS, but they're not fixing the underlying causes of why there's so much demand, or one of the causes of so much demand in the NHS, which is that we've got a population that's ageing with multiple comorbidities, who need more care. And if you don't get the care right in the social care sector up front, you have more presentations at hospital. And if you don't have, as I've said, the means to get people out of hospital when they're ready to go home because there aren't social care packages, you end up with a whole system that just isn't working. And so that's my frustration with Labour, really, that they have announced this commission, but there's no urgency to actually fix the fundamental things that will give the NHS the fighting chance of succeeding.
What changes are needed to the carers allowance to better support carers in this country?
So I'll give you one example of how this government is letting social care providers down. In the 2024 budget, there was an increase to employer national insurance costs. That increased cost, which had to be borne by social care providers, was not met with an uplift in funding from central government to local authorities. So there's a mismatch. And so one social care provider described to me the situation in terms of costs and workforce in social care as being like a burning platform. And that is just one element of decisions that have been taken that make it so much harder for social care to deliver for people.
Can you tell our viewers a bit more about your idea for a carers register and what problems do you think it will solve?
So we're really pleased that a thing that was good in the 2024 budget was increasing the value of the carers allowance and keeping the threshold for earnings in line with minimum wage. That's absolutely welcome. There are many challenges with the carers allowance. One of them, which is why there's been this huge problem with overpayments, is that there's a cliff edge on the benefit. So that as soon as you earn a penny more than the earnings limit, you lose all of the benefit instantly. And the Liberal Democrats have long called for there to be a taper on the carers allowance. So as your earnings increase, the amount you receive in carers allowance goes down. But more broadly, the carers allowance, it was described to me, it was a benefit invented in the 1970s for spinsters to look after their parents. And here we are in 2025. It's not a benefit that is designed to meet what current caring needs look like. And really, it needs sort of total review and reform.
Can you tell us a bit more about the idea for a carers register and in particular the problems that you think it will solve?
So I think there's a number of things we need to do in terms of the paid social care workforce in order to make sure that they are valued. And when they are valued, people want to work in that sector and stay in that sector. So in the general election last year, the Liberal Democrats called for there to be a higher minimum wage for social care workers than for people in other sectors. That's to recognise that working in social care is complicated work, it's demanding work, it requires a great deal of empathy. It is not a low-skilled job as it is sometimes characterised to be. So that's one thing we'd like to see. And another thing that we've called for is a Royal College of Social Care Workers. And we want people to have pride in working in social care. It is a really important role. And when I've gone out and met people working in social care, either in elderly care or don't forget about all the working age people who need social care support, so people with learning disabilities, for example. The people working in those sectors are amazing, wonderful, warm, compassionate people who are doing difficult work that is really unsung. And so a register of care workers is one step towards recognising the professionalism that they already have. And there's more that needs to be done than that, but it is a step in the right direction.
And what do you say to those care providers that say that they can't afford the increase in the carers' minimum wage?
I think that's a really valid concern. It comes back to making sure that for people who have got state-funded social care packages, the government follows through with the funding to support the costs that they put on providers. But I would also argue that it's a false economy to pay people peanuts. When you don't pay people enough, they don't stay in the sector. And we know that a lot of people working in social care are attracted by either better working conditions and sometimes better pay in the NHS. So that's one reason why it's so important that we recognise people in social care, that they have the skills and also the financial recognition for what they're doing.
And how long do you think carers can realistically wait for meaningful reform?
So this is my big frustration. You know, in July 2024, the Prime Minister could have stood on the steps of Downing Street and called for the Commission to start work then. Instead, we had to wait through to the first week of January 2025. We are now in the middle of December, and Louise Casey, who's highly respected, has begun work, and she is, She and her team are talking to people in the care sector. But we really wanted to see that work done by the end of this year. Clearly, that's not happening. And what we're looking at is a sort of 3-year time span for Louise Casey to complete her review. That's because that's the terms of reference she's been given by the government. It's not a criticism of her. But it means that we're staring down the gun barrel of the next general election. And we've seen what's happened in previous general elections over conversations about social care. And so my fear is that she reports and no consensus is arrived at before we get to a general election. And then we have the same government, a new government, who knows? It's not for me to predict.
Well, a Liberal Democrat government.
Never say never. But we end up not making any more progress. And then another review gets commissioned. And all the time, this burning platform of an ageing population, more people of working age needing social care, gets more and more acute. And nobody's actually wanting to deal with it.
Why is the government relying and resting so heavily on the Casey Commission for the solutions to the care problem? And also, what do you think the long-term funding solution for the care sector might look like?
So I've got an open mind about what may or may not come out of cross-party talks and Louise Casey's review. I'm very keen that the pursuit of the perfect doesn't get in the way of the good. I think it's more important we come to some cross-party consensus that everybody agrees to urgently, rather than getting into that kind of mudslinging that you've just outlined. In terms of your question about what's going on in the minds of the government, I think it's two things. I think one is social care's not flashy and visible and it's easy to ignore. And the second thing is that the Treasury don't see the benefit of investing in it. They only see the cost. But if you look at the Health and Social Care Select Committee's report, the first thing that they commissioned after the general election, actually you can't afford not to invest in social care for all the reasons that we've already discussed about the additional costs and pressures on the NHS if social care is kind of crumbling at the foundations.
If there was a general election tomorrow and you were to become overnight the new Wes Streeting, the new Health and Social Care Secretary, what would be the first thing that you would change about the care sector?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? I don't know. I think in terms of family carers, we need as a society to recognise that being a carer doesn't look like one specific or narrow thing. So there are 6 or 7 million carers in the country at the moment, and they cut across all parts of the country, all walks of life, all levels of affluence, and most of us will either be a carer or care for somebody at some point in our life. And the thing I've learned as the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for care and carers is that because being a carer is so all-encompassing, it touches many different government departments. So currently there is no overall carers strategy. There used to be one, there isn't one now, there should be. That's why I keep popping up in all sorts of different departments' oral questions in Parliament. It's not just health and social care, it's not just local government, it's also education, it's Home Office in terms of visas for overseas workers, it's DWP in terms of benefits. So it has far-reaching consequences, and until politicians recognise that, we are not going to get it right for family carers.
As you're well known, we've recently seen some fairly radical changes to this country's immigration policies by the government. What do you think about those changes and the impact that they are having on the care sector?
So I'm really concerned about them. They do two things in terms of social care visas. One, they mean that the period until you get indefinite leave to remain is longer. I think that will turn off the taps of people coming here and wanting to work in social care here. But two, you don't have to wait so long for ILR if you're in the NHS. So it will also draw workforce out of social care and into the NHS. And that already happens, but it will accelerate it. And I've heard from care home owners who are profoundly concerned about literally where their workforce is going to come from and how they're going to hang on to the people that they've got.
What would you say is the single greatest misconception that politicians have about unpaid carers in this country?
I think that it's all of us, and it could be you and it could be me, but it might not be us right now, but at some point somebody's going to need our care. And that might be for a matter of weeks at the end of somebody's life, or it might be for 50 or 60 years. You know, I've met unpaid carers in their 80s who've been caring for their children with special needs the whole of that child's life. So we never know what's around the corner, and that's why we need to have a system that's there and functions and supports people to do something that's undervalued but really, really important.
Great.
Good.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much.